Here's my question for you today. Do you ever feel tempted to cut corners when nobody is looking, whether it be in money, conflict, or personal rivalry, and then wonder why trust keeps leaking out of your life? Just remember this, that small injustices are never small in God's economy. In Deuteronomy chapter 25, we're going to unpack fair punishment, honest weights, levirate marriage, and the warning to remember Amalek. And I'll give you one immediate action to make your integrity visible this week in this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. Alright, so Deuteronomy chapter 25, it's gathering laws about proportionate justice, humane treatment in punishment, and honest weights and measures, levirate marriage, which I just discussed, and the command to remember Amalek's attack on Israel. So the chapter shows that covenant holiness reaches into courts, marketplaces, families, and national memory, and that God's people are called to fairness, mercy, and moral seriousness in all aspects of life. Okay, so we're going to read verses 1 to 3 to start off with, and in this section we're going to be focusing on fair punishment and dignity in discipline. Actually, maybe we'll read the first 4 verses, I think that'll be good. And the engagement question for you to stay focused is, why does God limit punishment instead of letting anger rule? Verse 1, suppose 2 persons have a dispute and enter into litigation, and the judges decide between them, declaring one to be in the right and the other to be in the wrong. If the one in the wrong deserves to be flogged, the judge shall make that person lie down and be beaten in his presence with the number of lashes proportionate to the offense. 40 lashes may be given, but not more. If more lashes than these are given, your neighbor will be degraded in your sight. Verse 4, you shall not muzzle an ox whilst it is treading out the grain. Okay, biblical unlock number 1. Why do we limit the amount of lashes, right? No more than the amount that is required. It's because justice must be correct. It's not a humiliation ritual, right? So the law protects human dignity even when guilt is real, and the punishment, as we saw there, needs to be proportionate. That's important, with the number of lashes being proportionate to the offense. 40 lashes may be given, but not more. Okay, so what it shows is that it's not cruel, it is proportionate, and that discipline in this sense preserves the moral order without turning the offender into a broken object. So the way Augustine saw murder as disordered love, justice is an ordered form of love, right? And correction should aim at restoration and not revenge. In verse 4, we saw that we cannot muzzle an ox whilst it is treading out the grain. So what is the point with this? It's to do with the fact that God's law teaches that labor deserves provision, right? So that means that the ox, if you do not muzzle the ox, it's allowed to eat whilst it is working. So if even an animal should not be denied food whilst it works, how much more should human laborers be treated fairly? And the law makes a small command carry a larger moral principle. Do not exploit the one who serves you. And this is a very important image and something that we'll see recurring in the New Testament as well. Okay, let's read verses 5 to 10 now. This is going to be on levirate marriage. Sorry, I said levirate. It's levirate marriage. And the focus here is going to be, why does the law care so much about a dead brother's name? Yeah, we're going to see that. So, let's take a look. Verse 5, when brothers reside together and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the deceased shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her, taking her in marriage and performing the duty of a husband's brother to her. And the firstborn whom she bears shall succeed to the name of the deceased brother, so that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. But if the man has no desire to marry his brother's widow, then his brother's widow shall go up to the elders at the gate and say, my husband's brother refuses to perpetuate his brother's name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother to me. Then the elders of his town shall summon him and speak to him. If he persists, saying, I have no desire to marry her, then his brother's wife shall go up to him in the presence of the elders, pull his sandal off his foot, spit in his face, and declare, This is what is done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. Throughout Israel, his family shall be known as the house of him whose sandal was pulled off. Biblical unlock number 2. Uh-oh, we have another weird law. Why would a brother marry his dead brother's widow? Again, remember, as I always say, the Bible is written for you, not to you. These laws are not intended for this particular context. We need to understand the difference between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant. But in this case, this law is meant to preserve the dead brother's name, protect the widow, and keep the family line alive. Marriage in the ancient Near East was a means of financial sustenance. Those who got married had some financial stability. That is why if the husband dies and you are left with a widow, then if a brother is still not married, then you have another window, another opportunity to keep yourself alive financially. Okay, so throughout many cultures in history, marriage has not primarily been about love. Obviously, the New Testament and Western framing is going to change that in the as we continue to read the Bible. But so in this case, it's more a covenantal responsibility. A brother is called to carry another's loss so that grief does not become erasure. Okay, your name is important, and even God knows your name, and stuff like that. So that is why this is important in this particular context. Okay, I'm going to read the final section of the chapter, which is going to be verses 11 to 19. There are actually 3 biblical unlocks here, but I'm going to combine them into one because I feel like if I go into each individual detail, it might be a little bit more difficult for me because there are various commands in this section. So I'll go through verses 11 to 19, and afterwards we're going to break it down into 3 sections afterwards. Okay, verse 11. If men get into a fight with one another, and the wife of one intervenes to rescue her husband from the grip of his opponent by reaching out and seizing his genitals, you shall cut off her hand. Show no pity. Verse 13. You shall not have in your bag 2 kinds of weights, large and small. You shall not have in your house 2 kinds of measures, large and small. You shall only have a full and honest weight. You shall have only a full and honest measure, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. For all who do such things, all who act dishonestly, are abhorrent to the Lord your God. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey out of Egypt, how he attacked you on the way, when you were faint and weary, and struck down all who lagged behind you. He did not fear God. Therefore, when the Lord your God has given you rest from all your enemies, on every hand, in the land that the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance to possess, you shall blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. Okay, biblical unlocks 3, 4, and 5. We're going to go through the first one, which is the verse what we just read right at the beginning, verse 11 to 12. If men get into a fight with one another, and the wife of one intervenes to rescue her husband from the grip of his opponents by reaching out and seizing his genitals, you shall cut off her hand. Why is this law so severe? Okay, why? It's because the body matters, and shame cannot be treated lightly. So this law, remember, in its original context, doesn't apply today. The law protects public decency and personal honor by rejecting sexualized violence and social indecency. So it's a vivid reminder that even in conflict, the dignity of the person remains sacred, and seizing someone else by their genitals is it's a clear, it's clearly violating that person's sexual integrity. Then in verses 13 to 16, we read that we read about honest weights and measures, and why you can't have 2 kinds of weights, large or small, 2 kinds of measures, large and small. You should only have 1 full and honest weight. Why is that? Because remember, the idea here is that God wants Israel to be distinct from its pagan neighbors, okay, from its polytheistic neighbors. And I just want to point out something. What is this measures? What is this scales? All of this stuff? What does that even mean? In the ancient world, people used stones, scales, and measures to buy and sell grain, silver, food, and other goods. And a dishonest seller might keep 1 heavier weight for buying and 1 lighter weight for selling. so they could cheat people without it being obvious. So God says his people must not do that. They must use the same full and honest standard at all times. So the passage actually teaches something. No deception in trade, no hidden corruption, no exploiting others for profit, and no pretending to be fair while still being unfair. Okay, so the phrase you see here, so that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you, right? It shows that this is not just about economics. It is a part of Israel's covenant life with God. If they built society on honesty and justice, they would live in a way that pleased God and helped the nation remain stable and blessed, okay? So God hates stealing, dishonest stealing, because it twists justice and harms other people. And the last thing, verses 17 to 19, we see Amalek, right? You need to remember Amalek. So why does Israel have to remember Amalek? Just a little bit of background. It refers to the early event that we read in Exodus chapter 17. Right after Israel left Egypt, they were exhausted, they were vulnerable, they were disorganized. Then the nation of Amalek attacked them, but not in a normal battle. They targeted the weak, the stragglers at the back, those who were already faint and weary. So this wasn't just warfare, it was cruel, opportunistic violence against the most defenseless people. And the text says he did not fear God, so Amalek showed no moral restraint whatsoever. So, what does it mean? It means we need to remember. That means don't ignore evil. Remember what happened. This isn't about personal revenge, it's about moral awareness. Evil that preys on the weak must not be brushed aside or forgotten. It says, blot out the remembrance of Amalek. That means justice against persistent evil. And it's a command of judgment against a people who embodied ongoing, unrepentant hostility and cruelty. So the passage here has a deeper meaning, which is God defends the weak and takes injustice seriously, and God does not ignore cruelty, especially against the vulnerable. Judgment may be delayed, but it is not forgotten. Okay, let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. Deuteronomy chapter 25 shows that God's justice is never abstract. It touches punishment, work, family, speech, business, and memory. In Christ, that justice and mercy meet perfectly. Jesus refuses exploitation. He honors the weak and exposes hidden corruption. Without losing tenderness, he becomes the one who bears shame, restores dignity, and calls his people to a holiness that is truthful in the small things as well as the large ones. As we read in Matthew chapter 23, verse 23, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faith. It is these you ought to have practiced without neglecting the others." Alright, let's go through some practical applications of this chapter. Integrity. Okay, I want you to review your integrity. Where you handle money, time, responsibility, right? Review one of these areas and ask, is there any hidden unfairness? Is there an exaggeration that's going on? Is there cost cutting, corner cutting, whatever you think? Okay, we need to make sure that we have integrity. This should be a value that we live by. And the second thing is, write down one injustice or wound that you tend to forget and pray over it honestly and ask God to make you merciful and alert, not cynical and passive. We need to use our memory in a way which allows us to deal with integrity and mercy. The world will often tell you, forgive but never forget. But God does not remember our transgressions, and we must be like our Father in heaven when we're trying to deal with situations with other people who have wronged us as well. Alright, well that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. Next time we're going to move from justice in daily life to first fruits, covenant, confession, and public memory in Deuteronomy chapter 26. We're going to see how worship, testimony, and gratitude turn a settled people into a thankful people. So, if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate the show and follow. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.